Relentless Pursuit by Zhou Dedong. When everything seems absolutely safe, please turn around and look back. For generations, the villagers took turns keeping track of great-granddad's age. He was very, very old, and yet he kept on living. The road behind him had blurred, the world before him had blurred, but the thing in his mind remained crystal clear. He had told that experience to countless people. He told it to family, he told it to outsiders, and in the end he told it to the foolish child I was. He was afraid that if one person did not know, then at least someone else had heard it 3 times. His life was anything but ordinary. He had once been a bandit, and altogether he had killed several dozen people. They said that every time he killed someone, he would wrap the body in white cloth. He had seen life and death, weathered great storms, and could be said to fear nothing under heaven, except that thing. He insisted on his own view. That thing was not a wolf. A long time ago, between Guatun and LILI-D town, there stretched an endless meadow, wild and desolate, with very little farmland. The damp black earth was thick with all kinds of unnamed flowers and weeds, dying back and coming back on their own, year after year. According to great-granddad, the sky was bluer then, and the clouds were whiter. Back then there were very few people on the whole earth. The meadow was a world for wild wolves. Anyone who crossed it was like a rat running through the street. Even broad daylight was no safer than night. One midsummer day, great-granddad went to LILI-D town. He could no longer remember what for, only that it was all hazy in his mind, and he vaguely recalled going there in a cart with big wheels. At noon, he walked into a tavern. From that moment on, he had entered the opening of great-granddad's terrifying memory, and every tiny detail after that was horrifyingly clear. He settled down firmly and ordered 2 plates of pig's head meat, a pot of steaming old white liquor, 2 bulbs of garlic, and 4 big bowls of corn porridge. After eating and drinking his fill, he felt pleasantly drunk. Looking up at the window, he saw the sun shining with vigorous life. Great-granddad decided it was time to head back. To cut across that meadow, people had to travel in a group. But by then the liquor was surging up to great-granddad's head in waves, and when he thought of Wusong drunk on Jingyang Ridge beating the tiger, a fierce bravado also rose in him. 3 bowls and no crossing the ridge, he did not care about that. He pulled out a handful of bills to pay, shoved himself out of the tavern, and set off full of swagger and spirit. Once he left LILI-D town, great-granddad felt his insides turning over again and again, and his body grew unbearably hot. He unbuttoned the collar at his neck, and a cool breeze poured in at once. There was a narrow path across the meadow, winding and broken, hardly enough to press down the grass. As great-granddad walked that path that barely held the grass down, he suddenly felt his scalp prickle. Without thinking, he turned to look back. There was nothing there. What a strange day this is, great-granddad thought. The wind was soft and gentle, stroking the still lush black hair. Great-granddad had back then and teasing the homespun cloth jacket he was wearing. The sun had tilted a little toward the west, shining down on great-granddad from high above. The flowers and weeds beside the road seemed like dry tongues, licking at the calves of great-granddad's not-so-sturdy legs and making them itch. He bent down to scratch and 4 pale white marks appeared. Insects chirred nearby. After walking a stretch of road, great-granddad began to feel more and more that something was wrong. A chill started creeping along his back. He spun around suddenly and looked this way and that for a long time, but there was nothing at all. He slowly turned back and his heart began to pound hard. He thought maybe I should sing a song to give myself courage, so he stretched out his neck and sang, "The great northern wasteland so barren and wide, full of rabbits and wolves, but short on pretty girls." That song is old and toothless now, but at that time it was as new as a baby. After singing, great-granddad looked back once more and was left staring in disbelief. In the grass, 2 faint green glimmers floated there, thick and sticky, sinister, deep, silent, and secretive. When it saw great-granddad turn around, it crouched down and stared at him listlessly. Great-granddad did not know what that thing was. By ordinary standards, it was a wolf. Yes, a wolf, sharp ears, a long drooping tail. But great-granddad said with absolute certainty that it was not a wolf. Great-granddad stood there dumbly. His chest felt tight. He wanted to shout once, but he did not dare tear open that iron silence. He felt that his own voice must be hoarse as thunder, and if he shouted, the body he was barely holding together would collapse all at once. So great-granddad did not shout. He only stared, foolishly. He saw the eerie green slowly spread out, wave after wave, drifting toward him and swallowing him bit by bit. Great-granddad stood in that boundless green, suffocating. In his pocket were 3 rough paper notebooks bought in Julandi town. He took them out and laid them on the grass, then pulled out the matches. Great-granddad hoped it was a wolf. They say wolves fear fire. The first match snapped, the second caught, but then a wandering gust of wind blew it out. He struck a third. The fragile flame flickered once and caught. Great-granddad began to burn the pages one by one. The 2 eerie green glows were now mixed with 2 flickering streaks of red, even crueler. It stared at Great-granddad without moving, as if engaged in a battle of wits, psychologically pressing him down until he would quietly suffocate to death. Soon one notebook had burned to ash. Great-granddad kept walking. The wild meadow was endless, so vast that one could not imagine the sky being any larger. If a fox or a rabbit kept running straight ahead, it would never vanish into ridges and hollows. Instead, it would grow smaller and smaller, until at last it became a fungus invisible to the naked eye on the skin of the meadow. Great-granddad looked back. It was still following him, neither fast nor slow, neither too near nor too far. Its long tail dragged on the ground, scraping against the dry flowers and weeds with a faint sound. Rustle, rustle, rustle. When it saw Great-granddad looking at it, it stopped and lazily stared elsewhere. Great-granddad felt as if he had grown a tail of his own, and the feeling disgusted and terrified him. His legs went weak. He could not go on, and he collapsed into the grass. He took out the second notebook and kept burning. In his heart, Great-granddad cried out, "Weak little flame, burn fiercely. Give me strength. Burn that thing down to a pinch of ash." It crouched there, watching every move Great-granddad made, expressionless. When Great-granddad finished the second notebook and stood up, it stood too. He walked, and it walked. Great-granddad flew into a rage. Blood surged all at once from his pale body into his head. He jerked his face around and roared, "You damn thing. Come on over here if you've got the guts." It barely reacted at all. It squinted a little, turned its attention elsewhere, as if its mind were somewhere far away. To Great-granddad that was a soft, cotton-like blow. He had no choice but to keep walking, and it kept following. Suddenly, Great-granddad's will to survive became fiercely strong, like a hurricane racing back and forth across heaven and earth. He wanted to fly upward, but the earth pulled him down. He wanted to sink underground, but the earth held him back. He was trapped on a single desperate plane. Flowers and weeds stretched to the horizon, and still no village came into sight. Boundlessness is a kind of freedom, and sometimes it is a far more terrible kind of bondage. Great-granddad's legs were trembling hard. He stopped and burned the last notebook. This time he burned it very, very slowly, as if extending his own meager life. The ugly gray ash twisted and drifted away like his numbed heart. Then Great-granddad became strangely detached. He tore the pages off one by one and fed them into the fire, his movements oddly graceful. He was holding a memorial service for a life that was about to vanish soundlessly into the wild meadow. The last notebook burned out. The last one. Great-granddad slowly got to his feet, and tears of sorrow ran down his face. He thought that thing must have seen him cry, and its expression must surely have been smug. But when he looked at it, its eyes were still so absent-minded, as if human tears held no interest for it at all. Only its hollow belly kept twitching. Great-granddad also felt empty inside, as if his belly had shrunk to his spine. He truly wanted to bite through that shuddering neck of fur. "It's over for me." Great-granddad thought. His knees went soft, and he knelt down before that thing. It did not accept the gesture. It looked at Great-granddad casually, a little baffled, as if human manners simply did not work on it. Great-granddad was completely desperate. He stood up and kept going, stumbling all the while. His legs trembled like silk in the wind, while his heart felt as heavy as a stone. The path patiently stretched forward, like a crooked knife stabbing toward the seam between heaven and earth. By then it was afternoon. The meadow was dead silent. Even the insects had stopped chirring. Great-granddad could hear only his own breathing. The heat shimmer from the ground trembled softly, pushing the horizon farther and farther away. In the blue sky hung more than a dozen motionless clouds, watching the long chase without the slightest change. Great-granddad had said that the sky was bluer then and the clouds whiter. "The road is still far off," its eyes seemed to say. Great-granddad stopped again. He crouched down and piled dirt into long ridges, long and longer still. He dug at the earth with both hands until blood seeped from his fingertips. He worked with great seriousness, as if building a wall to keep out the enemy. In the end, he stuck many blades of grass into the dirt ridges, and of course flowers too, the kind called purple duckbill flowers. He deliberately made his movements look mysterious. They say wolves are extremely suspicious, extremely sly. Even if a single blade of grass lies across the ground, they will not step over it. It crouched in the grass, staring at great-granddad with a look of complete distraction, as if watching a second-rate magician perform. When he was done, great-granddad walked on. Looking back, he saw it leap cleanly over the dirt ridge and continue tailing him. Its origins were unknown, its intentions sinister, its movements nimble, its force unstoppable. Great-granddad had run out of tricks, run out of inspiration, run out of road, and had no tears left to cry. His heart was empty, heaven and earth were empty. He walked forward in emptiness. At last, he could no longer walk upright. He was terribly exhausted, so he knelt down and crawled on all fours, his hands braced against the ground. At once the flowers and weeds came close, and he could smell fragrance flooding his nose. This way of moving was much less tiring, and great-granddad was deeply relieved to have discovered it at the very last moment of his life. That thing was perfectly clear-headed. It did not therefore take great-granddad as one of its own kind, nor did it show the slightest surprise at his collapse. It still followed behind him at an unhurried pace, its eyes still half-hearted and unconcerned. It was getting closer and closer. Great-granddad turned around and looked at it pitifully. He discovered that only about a meter separated them. It looked at him from up close and suddenly smiled. It suddenly smiled. Great-granddad repeated to me countless times, that was absolutely not a wolf's expression. It really was a human smile, the kind that bursts out because it can no longer be held in, the kind of smile that carries secret understanding. Now imagine this, a wolf's face wearing a human smile. Or rather, a human smile spread across a wolf's face. Or even more simply, something that no human being could ever quite identify, expressing a human smile through a wolf's face. What would that feel like? From that moment on, great-granddad was certain it was not a wolf. He kept crawling forward. Every so often he looked back, and each time it drew closer. The person hidden inside the wolf smiled at great-granddad every time. What was strangest was that great-granddad felt that smile was familiar, so familiar, yet he could not remember whose it was. From that smile he felt insulted, but by then he no longer had the strength to be angry. Great-granddad wore no expression and kept crawling and crawling like an animal. When he looked back again, it was already right there, so close that its sharp teeth were about to touch great-granddad's backside. Great-granddad felt warmth in his crotch. He had wet himself. He could no longer crawl, so he lay down. The sky was very blue, the clouds very white, but he could not see them. His wife was waiting for him where the cooking smoke rose, but he could no longer remember her. His heart was dead. His eyes were dead. His manhood was dead. All that was left was a mound for a nose, breathing in and out. That thing began circling great-granddad. At last it brought its face close to him. That mouth was fishy and foul, sniffing over great-granddad's body, searching for the best place to bite. Great-granddad stared at it stupidly. When it saw great-granddad looking at it, it gave him an apologetic smile. By then, great-granddad had no doubt left that it was a human smile. Only the smile was too familiar, the person too familiar. Great-granddad strained to remember, but he could not recall who it was. Great-granddad's fear reached its peak. At the very end, that thing aimed its teeth at great-granddad's neck and slowly opened its mouth. At that moment, great-granddad drifted into a hazy dream. The boundless 6 directions of heaven and earth turned into a giant stomach, a sinister green one. That green slowly writhed, digesting his life. It was a shepherd who saved great-granddad. By then the sun hung high and slanted in the western sky, so much so that it could barely still be called the setting sun. The sunset was gently shining over the village. The shepherd carried great-granddad back into his house, and the family dog actually barked wildly at him. They said it was because some wolf fur was hanging around great-granddad's neck. The shepherd said that there had been a group of people wrapped in white cloth standing around great-granddad on the meadow, pointing at him, winking, and making faces. The moment he got close, those people scattered. After that, great-granddad could remember nothing at all, as if that long chase had been the whole course of his life. In the extra years granted to him, he would often let out a sudden cold laugh and mutter to himself, with dozens of people squeezed into one face smiling, "Of course I can't remember who it was." The end.